Hi, this is Rik Emmett of Triumph, and I'm here with Mako, and I'm going to do the 250th episode of Talkin Blues.
I read somewhere, and I'm always hesitant to quote things that I read on the internet, but that your name is spelled the way it is because of an error in the album cover. Is that correct?
Yep, that was. The full story of things is, I was born a Richard, and then my family called me Rick and Ricky, and when I went to school, I became a Richard again, and everybody that ever knew me from school always called me Richard. And then when I got into my teenage years and started playing guitar and being on the track team and playing football and all those things, I got the nickname Rocket, which was a common nickname that other Richards would often get
Yeah,
because of Rocket Richard.
yeah.
But when I met the guys in Triumph and joined Triumph, I was a Rick by then to them, and I was Rocket almost right away to them. And yeah, the story about how the name got sort of changed, the spelling was that the first Triumph album was coming out. Mike Levine was the producer. He called me up one day to double check to make sure that the credit was going to read correctly, vocals, 6 and 12 string guitars, all that stuff. And he had recently borrowed some cash off me when we'd been out on the road playing some gigs. And when he paid me back, he wrote me a check. And on the check, he'd spelled my name R-I-C, Emmett. And I said to him, Mike, I hope you spell my name right on the credits because it's not R-I-C, it's got a K on the end. And he went, oh, okay. So then when the jackets got printed, and I think they did a run of about 10,000 records to start the first run, yeah, it was Rikemmett. And I went, oh my God. And it was 10,000 jackets. And I went, well, so that's okay. You don't have to throw them in the garbage. I'll spell my name different. So that's the story.
Wow. So, I mean, obviously, you grew up using multiple names, so you were probably used to using different names. I mean, this probably wasn't as big a shock to somebody who always had one single name, but that must have been a little devastating.
It wasn't a big deal at all. And that the whole thing of having different names, it's been an interesting thing in my life. Like, I never liked if people called me Ricky if they hadn't earned it. Like, to me, if you were going to use the diminutive form of my name, you had to be like family or you had to be somebody that really knew me well. So I didn't like it when, like, in a meet and greet in line, somebody would get to the front and they'd say, "Hey, Ricky, how's it going?" I'm going, you don't get to call me Ricky. That's for people that have earned it. And
Right.
Rocket was always one that was a very familiar sort of, like, my wife calls me Rocket a lot of the time, and the guys in the band, Gil and Mike, always pretty much called me Rocket. They never called me Rick or they never called me Richard. But I would do a thing like, say, play a gig where I was doing a lot of soft cedars in the last, say 5 years of my career. And so old high school pals would come out and see me, people that knew me in grade 11 or something, and they'd be in the meet and greet line. And when they'd see me, they'd go, "Oh, hi, Richard." you know, and I hardly ever hear that, except when I do hear it, I know, hey, this must be somebody that knew me in high school. So, but yeah, I mean, the misspelling of my name in a way, and this is sort of taking this on another tangent, but the way there's people in show business and they're like Madonna or they're Sting or they're, Alice Cooper,
Yeah.
like they have a stage name. And in a way, in a very kind of modest Canadian humble way, RIK was kind of my stage persona. That was who I became. Like, my mother would never sign a birthday card or a Christmas card or anything and write RIK. It was always RICK because she thought of RIK as, some bizarre affectation, of show business. And so, it's been an interesting thing to have it in my life that I can think of this RIK guy as something that got invented in 1975. And I've just recently made a deal with a publisher where I'm doing a book of poetry coming out this year, and then next year or a year after that or whenever it's finished, they're doing a memoir. And I had a discussion with my editor, and I said, should I reclaim my name, like the full name, Richard Gordon Emmett? Should I reclaim that? And he said, well, he said you can do it like on the title page inside the book, but on the outside cover, we're using RIK because that's who everybody knows. That's who the world knows. They don't know Richard Gordon Emmett. That'll only confuse them. And I go, okay, no, you're right. I get it. Totally. So RIK is my showbiz thing. Yeah. So that was a long story, but that's why we're
So
here, right?
and yeah, but so when you and also this is the name that becomes famous. So you have to now do autographs. Was that weird?
No, no. I mean, the whole thing about, like, I'll tell. I have a good story about autographs. I was once I gave away the Vezina Trophy at the NHL Awards in 1987, and I got to do that with Lanny McDonald. And then when you do these things, you get to go to a fancy dinner, and my wife and I got to sit at a table with Shannon Tweed, the Playboy Bunny of the Year, you know, and we were right beside a table where Gordie Howe was seated with his sons, Mark and Marty, and his wife Colleen, and so at a certain point, I sort of sidled over, and these kinds of awards banquets, they got like, it'll be like, construction contractors from Sudbury that have made a lot of money, and they bring their kids, and they got their little boys dressed in tuxedos, and the boys are kind of running around the whole time getting autographs from everybody, and
Right.
including Playboy bunnies and rock stars. So um, Gordie House beside me, and at one point I take my program and I sort of, slide my chair back and lean over and I say, "Excuse me, Gordie, I don't mean to interrupt, but and I know this is a pain, but could you please, sign an autograph for my dad?" And Gordie looks at me and he says, "Look, son, if somebody asks you for your autograph, you should always be very, very happy to do it." Because they're paying you a huge compliment. As he's signing the autograph, he's giving me a lesson in, like, showbiz integrity, kind of, right? And
Right.
I'm thinking, this is why Wayne Gretzky likes him. It's because he's kind of like everybody's grandpa. He, like giving you life lessons. So, like, I'm going, and it kind of had the aura to it of, like, he sees this long-haired rock star and he's thinking, this guy, he needs somebody to straighten him out, so Gordy's going to straighten me out. So it was great. It was like, it was a, but I always had that feeling in any case. I was never, uh, hardly ever unhappy, except to say, maybe as I got old and crotchety in a meet and greet when you're dealing with your 137th person, and they're starting to tell you their life story, I would sometimes, get a little bit short tempered, but generally speaking, I was always happy to sign autographs for people, and I always felt that it was, as Gordy said, somebody's paying you a compliment. They're showing you that you matter in their life, and that's a cool thing.
So I wonder, when you were growing up, was there athletes or musicians? I mean, obviously Gordie Howe was one, but I mean, was there other people you looked up to that you can understand how a fan might feel when they come to you and ask for an autograph?
Oh, sure. I mean, uh, I once had a thing happen where I was in Seattle and I was doing the National Guitar Summer Workshop program for a friend of mine who ran that for a while, and I was the hotel I was in. Steve Howe, the guitar player from Yes,
Right.
we were in the dining room, and Brian and I were sitting there having dinner, and there was nobody else in the hotel. And then all of a sudden, this guy starts walking into the restaurant, and I go, "Hey, Brian, I think that's Steve Howe." And Steve Howe had been like a huge kind of role model hero of mine. So I screwed my courage to the sticking place, and I got up and I went to him and I said, "Excuse me, are you Steve Howell from Yes?" And he goes, "Yes, I am." And I said, "Would you like to join us for dinner? We'd be happy to have you as our guest." And he said, yeah, all right. So, I got to sit with him, and I was literally like, an 8-year old boy, like so afraid of what I was going to say and how I was going to say it. And because this guy had been like a huge hero to me, as a teenager growing up and stuff. Um, and I've heard Alex Lifeson talk about when he met Jimmy Page and, feeling that same kind of fumbly, falling all over yourself kind of. And so I know that feeling. And so I always try to put people at ease, and I always just try to do the best I can when when I'm feeling it myself, and it happens. But you know, in the end, when you get to know celebrities and heroes, and sometimes when you get to meet heroes, they don't necessarily turn out to be, everything that you've made them up to be inside your own head. So I think I've always got to try and be an open and generous kind of personality when I'm dealing with other people, because my life has been predicated on the idea of offering something to people. There's no, like, they don't have to like me. I have to try and get them to like what it is that I do. And so you're always kind of trying to be honest with people and trying to work straightforward towards them. And so, social courtesy matters, social graces matter. All of that enters into it.
I wonder when you learned that, because I mean, when I read your interviews and view old interviews, I mean, I certainly get that you're very open and very honest. But when did that occur to you that this is the way you should be, or is it just the way you are?
I think, like, first of all, a part of every answer that you're going to get now is going to be steeped in the fact that I've been, working on this memoir day after day after day. So there's certain things where psychologically, you're really doing a lot of deep digging. So, all of my answers are going to end up going way off on a tangent and then coming back. When I was
That's fine.
yeah, when I was a little kid, I was very shy, extremely shy. And the other side of the coin was that I was also fairly talented in a lot of ways. Like, when I would do drawings in kindergarten, the teachers would be going like, "Oh, wow, this is amazing. Oh, this is incredible." And of course, I could sing even when I was really little. My mom would drag me off to the choir at church when I was like 7, 8 years old. I would be the guy that would have to star in the church Christmas pageant because I could sing songs and I could memorize things and spit them back. And so these things, I had all this shyness, but my mother would say, no, 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 you have this talent, so you got to perform. So the whole thing of being extremely shy but also being really talented, then it was kind of like, well, now you're going to be all the kinds of things that happen to kids. I would be on sports teams in school, and I would go and run in the district races, but I would win. And so then there would be this big deal in my classroom where it was like, oh, Richard Emmett's going to get the crest, and we're going to talk about this. He's going to get the trophy, and blah blah blah, all this stuff. So now you're sort of being turned into a kind of a public figure, even though it's not necessarily what comes naturally to you. So now you're just going to adopt this whole thing of uh, wearing masks and being an entertainer and learning how to be polite and learning how to be courteous and learning how to say the right things and be the right kind of, so that you get along with authority, because you're now dealing with teachers and play directors and choir masters and you know uh, coaches on sports teams, and you're getting along with all of these people and you're being put in positions of sort of responsibility. You go to Cubs and Scouts and it's like, well, no, you're going to be the leader of the six in Cubs, or the pack in Scouts. You're going to be sort of the representative, you're going to be the class president, all of this stuff. So you start to develop a sense of, I don't know, public kind of decorum, I guess is the word.
Right. Were you a confident kid?
No, no, I was, well, I would say I had two sides to my personality, two strong sides to my personality. One of them was being an extremely shy kid. The other side of it was being as eventually a very cocky, arrogant kind of adolescent, because I had all of this talent and ability that was then being um, constantly kind of reinforced. That it was like, well, this guy's, wow, he's talented. Like when I started playing guitar, I was, you know, one of the better guitar players in my peer group within the first few months. So, and of course I could already sing. So it was like, well, who's going to front the basement band that we're all having as 11-year-olds and 12-year-olds? Well, Rik is going to be the guy. So I, I ended up having this kind of dual thing of, internally I was shy, but externally I was becoming pretty cocky.
When this confident guitar player, because I keep reading about you in like folk houses, being a singer songwriter. And I know that your brother got you the Segovia album, and that got you into classical music. And I know guitar was a big part of you. I don't know at what point you decided which path you wanted to go.
Well, sometimes I think it's a question of, sometimes you're choosing the path and sometimes the path is choosing you. So a lot of it has to do with opportunity. Um, somebody says, "Hey, do you want to come and sing at this coffee house?" And you're not getting paid or anything, and you go, "Yeah, sure." And so you go and do it, and they go, "Oh, wow, this is great. Do you want to come to this high school and do one next week?" So that part of your life is developing. But by the same token, somebody's saying, "Hey, do you want to be in this rock band and you want to play these things? And oh, we're going to have a dance at the community center on Thursday night. And, will you come and play guitar and sing with a band at that thing?" So, none of these things are necessarily turning into a career. They're all pretty much still hobbies and just, weird little things that you're doing when you're a kid. But then eventually you get to a point where somebody's saying, "Hey, my uncle has a polka band. Do you want to come and sit in on that?" And like, you just got to play oomta 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 oomta, for an hour and a half or 2 hours. But you'll get paid. We'll give you $100. And so you kind of go, ooh, you know. So now the whole thing of electric guitar, sideman, working in a gig, playing in wedding bands, that's as lucrative as, the rock band thing that you do at Jesse Ketchum Public School on a Friday night once a month when you're in grade 12 or 13. And, you work for the door, and in the end of the night, there's enough money to buy a pizza and everybody gets a slice. And, you go, okay, you know, what path is choosing me now? Well, the one where you can make more money is clearly the one where, you're going to start. So you're starting to think of yourself as a jobbing musician, but one thing leads to another, and eventually you get a job playing in a rock band. Like the first steady job I got playing in a rock band 6 nights a week with Justin Page, I'm making $175 a week, and I'm wearing full face makeup and a weird costume, and I'm playing David Bowie and Lou Reed songs, and of course Page, he had an album deal with Capitol. So that was the first job, full time job I had as a gigging rock guitar player. But and once you're doing it, it's like, I guess this is who I am. I guess this is what I do. I'm a rock guitar player, because I get paid every week to do it. So the opportunity ends up being the thing that chooses the road for me, and of course, there I am, I'm wearing makeup and stuff. Back to the other question about masks and stuff. It's like, what could suit me better? I don't have to be myself. I can adopt this character, this costume, and I can be that guy, you know? So,
I wonder, but was there any other options? I mean, did you think you were going to be a musician and that was it, no matter if it was going to be jazz or doing weddings or whatever? Or did you have anything else that you thought you might do pursue?
well, I'd spent a semester being a teaching assistant at Lord Dufferin Public School in Toronto. So, and that was in the special education classes. And I had taught music lessons and private guitar lessons to people. I'd spent summers being a camp counselor and then also being a teacher in a drop-in center music school thing that happened one summer. So I'd had experiences where maybe I was going to be a teacher, but while I was working and playing uh, musician type gigs, I'm going to take a step back because the better way to answer your question is this: that when I was a teenager, from an adolescent, a preteen, a teenager, from the ages of about 9 or 10 until I was 16 or 17, I wanted to be an athlete. That's what I wanted to be. I wanted to do sports. But when in my senior year of high school football, I got my knee really badly torn up, and I was never going to be an elite athlete anymore because I didn't have an anterior cruciate ligament. So, like my knee had been the cartilage had been destroyed and stuff, like it had been ruined. So that was the thing that sort of said, okay, what do you want to do with your life? And at 17, I was going, well, I'm not going to be able to play sports for a living, but I can play music. And that's the thing that was the real determining factor. I wanted to play, and music was something that I could play. I didn't want to work. I wanted to play. And I would have been happy being a sideman in a working, jobbing band. I would have been happy being in a country band, or I would have gone wherever I could make the most money. you know, that's because in the end, what I wanted to do was move out and move in with my girlfriend, and I wanted to marry her, and that's what I wanted. I wanted that more than I wanted, some sort of specific style of music or some specific kind of, music career. Like the career was only going to help fuel my life with my wife.
Oh, that's interesting. So, would you have said like was that the goal? Like, would you have like because so many people would grow up and think, oh, I want to make it big in music. I mean, maybe not all, but I find that true musicians don't think that way. They just want to play. But I wonder if you had a goal other than wanting to move in with your girlfriend
No,
musically.
well, I, I always loved music, um, for very pure aesthetic kinds of reasons. So, and I loved singing in the choir. I loved playing in the school orchestra. I played violin for 4 years. I loved classical guitar. I loved jazz guitar as much as I loved rock and roll. I loved rock and roll too, but I didn't discriminate that much about what it was that I loved. If I loved it, I loved it, and I didn't think, right, I have to love this to the exclusion of all else. I embraced the whole thing. So, and I still feel that way about music. So I never got into rock and roll because I wanted the sex and the drugs and the rock and roll. I got into the rock and roll because I loved the rock and roll. I loved the music part of it. The sex part of it, I had no interest. The drugs part of it, I had zero interest. You know, I loved the music, and so that made me a bit of an oddball because a lot of people that get into that end of the business from a performance point of view, they're all about wanting the fame and they're all about wanting the money, you know, and that stuff I was like, yeah, I'll take it or leave it, Okay, okay, I'll take it. Thank you. It's great, but I don't need it. It's not what I'm here for.
But I would assume that for a band like Triumph to get to the level that they did, I mean, you must have worked very hard to get to that, right?
Yes.
Like that just doesn't happen.
No, you're right. And I had the right partners for that. I was the right thing in the right place at the right time for that band because they needed a guy who could write and sing and play and front the trio that they were the ones that had the vision and the business plan and the marketing plan and you know that they were the ones that had the business chops. I was the junior partner who was going to front the thing and provide the talent. So, that was the arrangement and it worked out really, really well. Um, I got to do what I did best and they were doing what they did best. And, I was, taking orders.
Okay, so when it becomes a business like that, because I presume very quickly when you attain that level of success, that it's not just about music, it becomes merchandising, it becomes tours, it becomes this huge machine. Do you resent that? Like, are you going through this going, I'm not sure if I'm comfortable with this?
Well, yes and no. I mean, first of all, the paychecks are great, and the career is going pretty good. And so, you know, and I mean, it's all happening sort of. It's in some ways it's like you're on a roller coaster and you can't get off. You have to. You're in for the ride, and so that's part of it. And another part of it is there's things that are happening. Like in 1980, 81, I got an invitation to write for Guitar Player magazine. And that's like, to me, Guitar Player was like the Bible. It was like, that was an amazing thing that the Triumph career was making happen in my life. So I was like so happy to be able to do that. And so, one thing is sort of aiding and abetting another thing. And another point I want to make in answer to this question is, and I want to make sure that I'm very clear about this. In the early stages of the Triumph career, I would say the first 6 or 7 years of it, it was like Three Musketeers. We got along and everybody was willing to make sacrifices and compromises and it was a really and it was there were a lot of laughs. It was a really strong kind of a partnership. If it had been any kind of a startup, like the way there's internet startups now and digital companies and people are very entrepreneurial. There was a real entrepreneurial kind of brotherhood that formed, and it was a very positive kind of a thing, which I think contributed to its success. We loved to laugh, and there were a lot of good jokes. Like Triumph had a very internally, privately, it did not take itself seriously at all. It was like this, can you believe this is happening kind of, you know, uh, camaraderie, you know. Uh,
Right.
so, um, what you're talking about, the disenchantment, that came later. That came, and the feeling like I was kind of committed inside a machinery that was making me unhappy. That didn't happen until, I would say the ninth, 10th year, the doubts started to creep in. And then, by the 13th year, I was out.
Which is still a long time.
You bet. That's longer than the Beatles.
Now, in that time, you wrote some amazing songs, which has become the soundtrack of our lives. How do you look back on those songs?
Um, I mean, I'm grateful for them, certainly, and I mean, I've retired from touring now, but when I would play even solo gigs or duo gigs with Dave Dunlop, I would have to play the sort of the evergreen songs were like Magic Power, Lay It on the Line, Hold On, Fight the Good Fight, Ordinary Man, Suitcase Blues. I would play those songs every night, and I was happy to do it. I loved those songs. Um, so, and I think there was again, the whole thing of sort of luck of being the right thing in the right place at the right time. Those songs became successful because of RCA Records really sort of pushing independent promo in the late 70s and the early 80s, and that we became sort of darlings of MTV. And Mike Levine really knew what he was doing with FM radio promotion. And so there was a lot of hard work and a lot of luck, and they were my songs. I was lucky that those songs got that kind of I don't know, push.
Do you really see it as luck though? Because I mean, it's an interesting concept that I've talked to a lot of musicians about, and I understand the idea of luck and timing, but obviously a lot of blood, sweat, and tears went into that, and it's oftentimes luck happens because of all the work that you put into it.
Yes, yeah. With preparation meets opportunity.
Yeah.
That's luck. Yes, of course, but it's still luck. It's still a question of like, and I played a lot of sports, and so sports metaphors and they pop into my head. Like there was a junior gold world hockey championship game last night,
Mm-hmm.
and the American guy tips a puck in front of the net and it goes past the goalie and it's a goal. The Canadian guy does it and it hits a post. Like in a certain way, sometimes you just kind of need that little tiny extra bit of being the right thing in the right place at the right time, luck. You know, Kawhi Leonard shoots the basketball and it bounces around on the rim and it bounces and it bounces and it bounces and it goes in and he's a champion. But some guys shoot it and it bounces and it bounces and it bounces and it bounces out. You know,
Mm-hmm.
that's sometimes you need the bounces in order for something to align, with the cosmos. So, I think there's you can be arrogant about this and think, no, 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 I'm so great that I make my own luck. And you go, well, okay, but talk to me again when you're 82 and you've got cancer, because that's going to happen. To like you think that life is just always about being able to be the master of your own destiny. That's not the truth. And when I was a young cocky man, there's a lyric in the song "Fight the Good Fight." You're the master of your own destiny, so give and take the best that you can. That's true only up to an extent. Like it's not true 100% of the time. You can't always be the master of your own destiny. Some little babies get leukemia. It happens. You know, some people get hit by a bus. It happens. So, how do you reconcile that in your life? And I think humility is one of the things that you have to acknowledge.
Is that a difficult thing to be aware of when all of a sudden you become a rock star and you were playing in front of 250,000 people? Or you go on tour and you sell out the whole tour?
Yes.
Like, is it still simple to keep everything into perspective?
No, it's not simple and it's not easy, but it needs to be done. It has to be done. And if you don't do it yourself, eventually life is going to do it for you. Like, I mean, let's think about this for a second, okay? Like, I'm going to use an example. Robert Plant, uh, apparently in the movie Almost Famous, when the singer of the band in that movie is standing on a roof and he's going, "I am a golden god." You know,
Yeah,
uh,
yeah.
apparently Cameron Crowe has said he based that on Robert Plant and him having, this kind of, and Robert Plant will even, admit in interviews, oh, I was pretty full of myself back in the day, Um, but Robert Plant had a child of his drown and die, and how do you come to terms with that if you think you're a golden god? So, life is going to have a way of coming along and humbling even the most golden of gods. And I think it's important for, golden gods to realize that. Yeah.
What's the greatest lesson you learned from that experience of fame with Triumph?
Oh, you know, I think it's hard in interviews when sometimes when people, like, when you ask a question, you say, "Tell me the one thing," and I go, "Yeah, but it's not one thing."
Right.
It's an easy question to ask, and it would be a glib thing for me to answer. Um, but it's not just one thing. It's an accumulation of dozens of things, and
Yeah.
like a lot of times in interviews, you get asked a question and it's an either or, well, do you think it's this or is it that? And you go, no, I don't think life can get boiled down to either or. I really don't. Like, sometimes it's way more things than just, you know, one or the other. It's not just yes or no. Sometimes it's maybe,
True.
like, and honestly, truthfully, I think that's the best answer I can give you to that question. Is in fact that whole idea of multiplicity and complexity. I think that is the thing that one has to sort of come to terms with. That's the answer. The answer is not thinking, right, I've got this figured out. It was black or white, and I'm going white. Like, you go, no, I think you've made a mistake there because it's going to be 1,000 shades of gray. And the sooner you come to terms with that, the more you're going to realize that's where, you know, uh, and it's not just happiness, it's more like just resolution of things. That's where you'll resolve that the answers exist.
Fair enough. Tell me
Eh,
about your songs. You tend to write very positive messages.
Yeah.
And so is that where does that come from? I mean, I've talked to a lot of musicians who say you have to write positive things. Even BB King said that to me. Is that like a philosophy that you have?
I mean, yeah, I mean, yes. Although, I taught songwriting for decades. So, and I would tell songwriters, look, even if you're writing a really, really sad blues, even if you're just, you're all you're wanting to write about is darkness and inky blackness and, you know, death and destruction and horror, you're going to have to light a candle and put it in a window for somebody because that's the thing that'll give your song life beyond the just the moment of your performance of it. It has to offer people something that to counterbalance the thing. And I think, having said that, I mean, there are blues songs where there's nothing happy about the lyric. There's nothing happy about the melody necessarily.
Right.
But when the song is performed, it now provides a kind of a, oh, I can't think of the right word. Catharsis for the performer and for the listener. And so now that's the positive value that the song has. And people go, yeah, even though that song is incredibly sad, like, I feel better after, because I've connected to that. And so now I have a better, deeper understanding of my sadness. And so you go, so that's the redemptive value of a lament, that of a blues, of something really, really sad. So, you ask me to trace that back to myself, and I would say, I sang choirs, anthems, and that was a lot of the music that I heard when I was young. and then just the songs that I loved, the Beatles, that kind of stuff. You're learning that songs are about making connections. So in the end, I think that's what it's all about, that emotional connection. Um, and that's what makes songs good. And so, I always wanted to try and do good songs. So I was looking to try and make those connections.
Did your approach to songwriting change when you left Triumph?
Oh, for sure, yes. Because part of writing songs in Triumph, and this had become all too evident over the last few albums, was that you're writing songs to try and fit the machine. You're trying to write songs that fit the image. And so this goes back to what you were saying about earlier, asking about the unhappiness about being in a box, being in a machine, being in a thing. Like I went, yeah, I don't want to do that anymore. I don't want to have to write to image. Now, it's hard to change. Like the first album I made when I left, they go, "Oh, well, you got to, geez, Rik, how about we put you on the cover with a Les Paul and a black leather jacket and, you play lots of sort of, progressive heavy rock. Like we need that in order to sell records." And I went, "Yeah, okay. I can't go wholesale." But on that first album, clearly the songs they were no longer Triumph songs, they were Rik Emmett songs, and so I could write more as a songwriter and start to establish that personality, which it took 3 albums, but I eventually got to the point where I was now a songwriter writing my songs, you know by the Spiral Notebook record. That's what was happening.
Okay, so but at the same time, as time went by, you also delved into a lot of other genres of music, like jazz, like flamenco, like classical. Is that a risky thing to do, or do you not care because you know who your audience is, or it doesn't have anything to do with the audience? It's who you are.
Well, you're sort of predicating this on the word risky, and you know um, wow, how am I going to answer this one? I think that if you're going to make music for a living, you're already doing something that's risky. Like
Right.
you're not doing a 9 to 5 kind of job that has a lot of benefits. Like there's nothing safe about it. Uh, and I always felt that the best songs, the best music was always the one where you were putting the most part of yourself at risk in whatever it was you were offering. And I would tell that to college students of music all the time. You must put yourself at risk in the work. If it's not there, if people can't find that in there, then you're not going to um, be able to find an audience, build an audience, and keep an audience. So now back to the idea of risk. Inherent in your question is the idea of, well, you have to sort of build up a kind of a box for yourself, and you have to service the box. But you got to keep people happy, And if you're Dolly Parton, for example, you do a brilliant job of that, and she has a lifetime career of selling millions and millions of records. Okay, I wasn't Dolly Parton. I never was, and I never wanted to be. I wasn't, a Gene Simmons kind of character. I wasn't even, Billy Joel I was Rik Emmett, and so I was making decisions and choices. Were those sometimes things that were going to start narrowing my audience down and destroying my own boxes? Yes, it was. And was I doing it willingly? Yes. Like I once wrote a song called Taste of Steel and presented it to my manager at the time. And he said, "But Rik, don't you understand? If you do songs like this, like what kind of a career do you want? You're going to be playing little jazz clubs and you're just going to be playing for, like, this is jazz, and you're going to, and I went, I know, that's what I want. You're my manager. You know, can't you help me make this happen?" And he went, "Yeah, but no." if you want to do that, you can just do that yourself. Just go ahead and do it. And that was part of the conversations that led me in the end to do classical guitar record. Swing Shift was the second record I did of my own as an indie, and it had Taste of Steel on it because I was going, yeah, fuck this. Like, fuck the whole idea of having to try and be on Billboard and having to try and have bullets on the hit parade. Like, I'm not going to chase that anymore. I'm just going to do what comes naturally to me. And if it's a jazz song, it's going to be a jazz song. If it's a classical guitar piece, that's what it's going to be. And, I'm not going to limit myself to just being one thing. I'm going to do the things that I can do happily and I think well. And if it means, I mean, I make jokes on the uh, cover of my poetry book. The last sentence of the bio, I wrote, I finally found a career thing that where I'll make less money than doing jazz guitar records because you know poetry. There's no money in writing poetry, but that's not the point. The point is that I wanted to be creatively. I wanted to be honest and true and do something creatively. Uh, yeah, honest and true.
Well, but if I go back to the earlier Triumph albums, it's not like you just did rock. I mean, you also did a bit of jazz, a bit of flamenco kind of stuff, like in the city and that song, or the Suitcase Blues is kind of jazzy. So,
Yep.
like very early on in your career, you had also played that, but I guess further down your career, you decided to pursue that in a deeper way.
Yes. And I wasn't, 25 years old anymore. That's part of it too, and
Right.
I think part of it is, I mean, for in my bio for years, there was a quote. I can't remember who the guy was, but he was a writer for, I think, Guitar World magazine. And when they did a feature on me in the thing, he wrote, one of the problems with Rik Emmett is he's just too talented for his own damn good. And I went, I love that quote. I'm going to use that quote because I think it's kind of the truth. Is that it's not necessarily talent. It's more like just an eclectic nature, And if you have that eclectic nature, you're shooting yourself in the foot, because it's not how industry works. It's not how the building of machines work, So, honestly, I probably wouldn't have had the adult kind of career that I had after I left Triumph if I hadn't been in Triumph, if I hadn't already built up a certain base and you know had a certain kind of notoriety and credibility established, because that's really hard to do, to establish credibility and integrity. Like, wow, so hard to do, especially in this day and age. Oh my God.
Were you ever surprised by your fans and the way they follow? I mean, I would presume that a lot of your fans and followers are people who first got to know you from Triumph. I presume that there are others who got to know you as a solo artist. But were you ever surprised by, I don't know if it's dedication, but by the fact that your fans follow you on the different way, the different paths that you've taken?
I think surprise is probably a good word, but the better word to describe it would be great gratitude. I was just grateful for it, surprised and grateful that it was there. And um, you know, by the time you've made it to 67, there's not necessarily a lot of shit that surprises you anymore. you know, like honestly, truthfully, um, because I mean, come on, Mako. We live in a world right now of Donald Trump and you know the
True.
the, the digital universe, the onslaught of the digital universe, the avalanche of it. Like the things that people will do on TikTok. You know what I mean? Like, come on. Like nothing surprises me anymore.
You said you were retired, and this is retired from touring, but I presume you're still writing like crazy
Yeah, I'll never
and
retire from.
recording.
Yeah, I'll never retire from being creative. Yeah, but yes, I don't go on the road anymore. Well, nobody does right now.
True.
Yeah. So, but I retired from the road at the beginning of 2019. So I had a year where I was, seeing what it was going to be like, sort of being on hiatus, and then COVID came along, and that sort of sealed the deal. I kind of went, yeah, well, you know, I'll probably never go back to touring again. I might go back to playing an occasional thing somewhere somehow, but will I want to gear up to be able to play 90-minute shows? I doubt it.
What do you miss about the playing live aspect? Because you're still obviously playing just as much as, I mean, I presume that you're probably still recording and writing as much as you used to. But
Yes.
what is it about not playing that you miss?
Um, a
Playing
spiritual
live,
the
sorry.
spiritual value of communion. Like it literally is like playing live gigs when it was good was like going to church and having communion. It was beautiful. It wasn't always that great, but when it was great, it was that great. And so I miss that. But do I miss uh, going to the airport and checking in and uh, going to a hotel and checking in? And do I miss carrying my luggage? And do I miss having to do U.S. immigration paperwork every year? Fuck no.
Okay, so you alluded to the fact that you're writing. You're writing a memoir. You're also writing a book of poetry. How was that transition to becoming a writer?
Well, the poetry's done and delivered. I mean, I,
Okay.
I wrote that in my year off and then into 2020 and delivered that. So I'm going to be in the fall catalog for ECW Press. And that's my commercial. Thank you very much. Um,
What do you hope to
so,
achieve with that poetry book?
uh, wow. It was cathartic. So, I think what I hope to achieve is that maybe people will like, when Michael Holmes, who's my editor, uh, read it, he said, "You know what? This deserves to be printed. It deserves to be out. It's good." And I was going, "Well, it's the first book of poetry I ever did." He goes, "Yeah, but it's good. It deserves to see the light of day." So that was a lovely kind of thing to have an experienced writer, editor guy say. And I think in the end, that's why I wrote it, so that somebody might say, "Wow, it's good. It's not bad. He's actually a poet." So that was all. It was a self-defining kind of thing, and what I hope is that people will think the writing is decent, is valuable, is worthwhile, you know, and maybe I'll get a chance to write more, and get better at it, you know. That
Is it a
that's
different approach than writing songs?
it was a lot more liberating because songs are so uh they have structure and form that you must adhere to, like your second verse much must match the phrasing of your first verse, kind
Right.
of thing. Whereas in poetry, you're allowed, there's a the parameters are sort of deeper and more, they're more vague, you know um they're there, you still have to try and have a discipline to what you're doing, but it's a different kind of a discipline. It's and I really enjoyed it. Once I'd sort of discovered there's a type of poetry called ultra talk, which when I started reading it, I was going, "Oh, this is good. I like this." Like I think I could get away with this. So, you know, um, that was kind of the tipping point for me. I had poetry in old lyric books and in old notebooks and things, but like songwriting is very it's the thing that I know, and so poetry was something that I didn't know, so it was like undiscovered territory. It was very um, enriching, very very enlightening. So that's why I did it.
What is the book called?
It's called Reinvention, and yeah, I don't know what the memoir will be entitled yet. And just so you know, there's a members forum on my website, and I've been doing it for almost 2 decades. And so I told my webmaster, can you give me a document of all of the postings that I've done in the forum so that I could start there? And so when I got that document in Microsoft Word, it was over 5,500 pages, single spaced 5,500 pages. So it's been an editing job so far. Like, writing is often about rewriting, but nevertheless, like I've just been trying to, and I've chiseled it down now. I've got about 1,300 pages right now, and I'm hoping to be able to maybe get it down to about, I don't know, less than 400 would be good. You know, probably less than 300. My editor would be happy. I don't know. But the thing is, what I'm realizing is there's more than one book. There's a memoir, but there's also a songwriting book. There's probably one about the music business, you know. So that's what's going on there.
Um, you're a very creative person. I understand you also paint. Is that correct?
Yeah, not very often, but I can. I have the ability to do it, and I would not consider myself to be very good at painting. I can sketch. I was a cartoonist for my school papers in college. I did drawings, and I would do sketches for Triumph album artwork and stuff, and work with the artists. So I have that ability, but it's just I don't have the time to do that.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, I wonder how you do find the time to do all that you do. I mean, do you organize it? Is it just based on today I feel like writing, today I feel like writing a song, today I feel like playing guitar? How does that work?
Well, no, I mean, lately I've been a writer, sitting in front of a computer and writing, and when I did the poetry, I would mostly be in notebooks with a pen writing, and then I would convert it to computer and be writing that way. So I haven't been playing a lot of guitar lately. I haven't painted anything for maybe 2.5 years. Little sketches, sometimes in a notebook. Like sometimes creativity is such that sometimes it kind of jumps up and it bites your ass, and you don't have any choice. I do a little drawing, or I'm going to write a poem, or I'm going to be working on a song lyric a little bit. Like I've probably got 5 lyrics of songs in my I have a 3-ring binder where once things have sort of reached a certain point, I'll work in the 3-ring binder so that I can put it on a music stand and have it in front of me. And my spiral notebooks can lie flat on music stands in front of me. So sometimes I'll do that when it's biting me. But mostly right now I've been just writing.
I'm going to wrap this up. I want to thank you for doing this. As I
You're welcome.
said, it's been a long time. But let me ask you one final question. Tell me about your relationship with music, because I know it's a lifelong pursuit. And I don't know if going through these memoirs brings, I don't know, makes you more reflective. But tell me about the relationship you've had with music all your life.
Well, music is it's the passport to the universe. It's the thing. It's the ineffable, aesthetic, beautiful, infinite face of God. That's I would say that.
Great. Rick, thank you so much for doing this. It's been a thrill. In my years of interviewing people, I played music for very short periods in my high school, and you happen to be one of the few artists that my band plays. So it's a thrill.
uh, I'm happy to hear that.
Thank you for doing this, and really, really appreciate this.
You're welcome, sir. It was my pleasure.